Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host and head witch, Miss Solaris BlueRaven, at the helm this evening. I want to give a shout-out to everybody at Revolution Radio, staff, producers, listeners, chat room, and thank everybody for tuning in tonight. We are 100% listener-supported, so if you like what you're hearing, please click on the donate button. We appreciate your support, and thank you for any contribution you can make to this excellent station. And you are listening to Studio A, and my special guest this evening is Robert Sullivan IV. And let me get you his bio. Robert Sullivan IV is a philosopher, historian, anti-quarian, jurist, theologian, writer, and lawyer. The Royal Arch of Enoch was his first published work, 2012, and was the result of 20 years of research. In 2014, Sullivan published his second book, Symbolism, A Guide to Esoteric Imagery in Popular Movies. Mr. Sullivan received his BA from Gettysburg College in 1995, having spent his entire junior year studying European history at St. Catherine's College at Oxford University. He received his JD from Widener University Delaware campus in 2000. He studied international law and jurisprudence at Trinity College, Oxford University. Mr. Sullivan is a Freemason, having joined Amicable St. John's Lodge 25, Baltimore, Maryland in 1997. He became a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason in 1999, Valley of Baltimore, Orient of Maryland. A lifelong Marylander, he resides in Baltimore. And his website is robertwsullivan4.com. And it's with great pleasure that I welcome Rob to the show this evening. He's been on my show before. And Rob, how are you tonight?
Hey, Solaris, how you doing? Thank you for having me on the Witching Hour. Quite literally, it's a little past midnight here in Baltimore, Maryland, on the East Coast. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. It's always wonderful to have you on. You're a wellspring of information, and I'm looking forward to having you on and discussing all your cool stuff. You've got a great new book out, and I'd like to cover that tonight as well as your original material. So wherever you want to start.
Yeah, sure. That would be great. I start with, it's been 2 years almost since the Royal Arch of Enoch came out.
Wow.
Almost 2 years to the day, to be honest with you. That came out in August of 2012, as you said. And that book is a book really about esoteric Freemasonry, and the main thrust of that book. I don't want to do a whole show on the Royal Arch of Enoch, but just briefly, the thrust of this book was that this particular high degree Masonic ritual known as the Royal Arch of Enoch, it's the 13th in the original Rite of Perfection, it's the 13th in the modern day Scottish Rite, and it's the 7th degree in the York Rite. And those are the two premier high bodies of Freemasonry, was incorporating elements of the original Book of Enoch, or 1 Enoch. And when this ritual was being developed in the 1740s, 1750s, the Book of Enoch, or 1 Enoch, was lost to Western civilization. It goes missing from around the second, third century Common Era to about to 1773. And even then, it's returned to Europe by a man named James Bruce. A couple copies are returned to Europe from Ethiopia in 1773, but then they're just deposited in the basement of the Bodleian Library, where they remain untranslated until 1821. Yet this high-degree Masonic ritual known as the Royal Arch of Enoch, it bears the biblical patriarch's name and is incorporating elements of the Book of Enoch. And I talk about this and its importance within the development of the United States, both on a philosophic and political and economic level, a socioeconomic level, and how the symbolism coming out of this degree is defining things like the Federal District of Washington, D.C. on an architectural basis. And you'll see it all over the place. So you'll see it in Baltimore, Maryland. You'll see it in the Erie Canal. You'll see it all over New York State. New York City, all the colleges and universities, they're Masonic, Enochian, solar symbolism. And the last chapter of this book, the last chapter of the Royal Arch of Enoch book dealt with Masonic and what I best describe as Masonic, Enochian, solar, esoteric iconography in popular movies. Movies that were covered in the Royal Arch of Enoch were movies such as Being There with Peter Sellers. I'm trying to think. The two National Treasure movies, National Treasure 1, National Treasure 2, the Da Vinci Code movie, Excalibur, the John Boorman Arthurian Legend movie that came out in the late 1970s, early 1980s, which is essentially a solar allegory. That's in the Royal Arch of Enoch book. And to make a long story real short, there were a lot of whole other movies that I wanted to talk about, I wanted to analyze, but they really didn't belong in the Royal Arch of Enoch. So I essentially, immediately after Royal Arch of Enoch was published, I started writing this new book that just came out literally. It's brand new. It's only been out for about a month. called Symbolism, A Guide to Esoteric Imagery in Popular Movies. And it's really sort of a continuation of this final chapter of the Royal Arch of Enoch, where there's a whole lot of all these other movies I wanted to delve into and talk about. And, it deals with a lot of mythological, hidden numerology, Kabbalism, Freemasonry, a lot of esoteric imagery in general. And this book, again, is called Symbolism, A Guide to Esoteric Imagery in Popular Movies, and it's literally brand new. It's basically been out for a month.
Awesome. Yeah, that's fabulous. And before we get started with that, I did want to ask you one question about your other book.
Sure.
What degree level were we talking about with the Royal Arch of Enoch? I mean, when you're getting to that level of initiation, can you elaborate just a little bit on insofar as what level that was?
Right. Sure. When you go into Freemasonry, I just give a little bit of a backstory here. When you join a Masonic lodge, you join what's called the Blue Lodge, and this is degrees 1, 2, and 3. This is entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason. And it's not until you complete the master mason degree, and in most jurisdictions pass what's called a catechism, which is an oral examination of the degree, that you can hold yourself out as a master mason. Once you do that, then you're a Freemason. Then you can hold yourself out as, yes, I am a Freemason. My Blue Lodge is what you said at the introduction of the show. It's amicable, St. John's Lodge number 25. Now, once you become a Freemason, once you complete the third degree ritual, two higher degree bodies are opened up to you, and it's your choice. It's completely individual choice. It's your choice entirely which one of these bodies you wish to go into, if any of them. It is not mandatory that you join either of these bodies. It is completely voluntary, and it's up to you. Some people join both. Some people join one. Some people join neither. It's completely up to you. And these are what are called the York Rite and the Scottish Rite. The York Rite is an invention. Is the godfather of the York Rite is a man named Thomas Smith Webb. And the Scottish Rite is founded in 1801 in Charleston, South Carolina, by a man named Frederick Dalcho. But both high degree ceremonials are born out of which is the original high degree body, which is known as the Rite of Perfection. This is the original core high degrees that essentially godfather the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. It's easier to see their influence on the Scottish Rite more than the York Rite, but Webb picks apart a couple of the degrees in the Rite of Perfection to formulate the York Rite. At any rate, if you decide to join one of these two bodies, you're going to encounter this degree known as the Royal Arch of Enoch. That's what it's called in the Scottish Rite. In the York Rite, it's called the Royal Arch of Zorobabel. And the reason this degree is very important is, and it's really one of the premier degrees in the high degree system. In fact, in the original Thomas Smith Webb system, it's the end of the ceremonial. It's the end of the story. And even in the Scottish Rite, and even in the York Rite, there are degrees that come after the Royal Arch ritual, but a lot of the degrees take place chronologically before the Royal Arch ceremonial. So it's really the end of the story with Freemasonry. And what's going on in the ritual is, and again, this ties into the Blue Lodge, and I'll just try to condense this. When you're in the Blue Lodge and you're going through the third degree ritual, there's what's called the secret word or the lost word of a master mason. And it's this word, it's this name of God that this guy named Hiram Abiff possesses in the third degree ritual. This is in the Blue Lodge. Make a long story short, Hiram Abiff is killed, and when he's killed, the word is lost. It's lost in the Blue Lodge. It's called the lost word of a master mason. And when the candidate is brought back to life as Hiram Abiff, he has a substitute name, a substitute word whispered in his ear. The word is lost until you get to this Royal Arch ceremonial, which documents the recovery of the secret name of God, the secret word, what's called the tetragrammaton. And it's very important because in the American context, it invests the candidate as like a citizen priest king, and this is coming straight out of the Book of Enoch. It's very important because in the original high degree system of Webb, this was the ending of the story, and it really was a lot of people in the early days of this country, mainly people like DeWitt Clinton, and a lot of these early Royal Arch Masons who were using the high degree systems and the Royal Arch in particular to sort of symbolically define the United States of America. And we're using the higher degrees, and specifically the Royal Arch, to sort of unite the country and try to end political rancor and things like that. So it's really this really premier, higher degree. And again, the reason it's so important is not only does it document the recovery of this lost word, but it incorporates elements of the Book of Enoch, which shouldn't be happening. The Book of Enoch is, at the time when this ritual was being formulated, was lost to Western civilization, again until 1773, and even then until 1821 when it's finally translated by a man named R.V. Charles, or R.H. Charles. I'd have to check on that. It's the original translator of the Book of Enoch. But yeah, it's a very important high-degree ceremonial. It's a 700-page book, the Royal Arch of Enoch, that really goes into this historical anomaly and why it's so important within Freemasonry, and why it's really critical when you start to understand and talk about things like the esoteric or arcane history of the United States of America. It's fascinating subject matter, and again, you'll find the symbology all over things like the Federal District, colleges and universities, the Erie Canal, things like that.
Oh, absolutely. It's our history, whether people like it or not. I mean, that's the bottom line. So I find it fascinating, and I do encourage people to pick up a copy of your book, by the way. I think that it would explain a lot of things to them they're based on, some people get superstitious when it comes to Masons. But I was going to ask you about the Enochian solar symbolism. How do you define that?
Well, what you have going on in the Blue Lodge, and it's carried forward, it's carried forward in the Royal Arch ceremonial, and it comes straight out of the Book of Enoch, is basically within Freemasonry, the sun is the most important. This is the way I open up the book, actually. What we're talking about now is actually the very beginning of the Royal Arch of Enoch book, where within Masonry, the most important symbol within Masonry is the sun. And this is, again, it's the light of the world. It brings light. This is where you get enlightenment or wisdom or gnosis or self-awakening, epiphany. It ties into things of Gnosticism. And this is paralleled in the Blue Lodge. I mean, my goodness gracious. We could do a whole show on this. I mean, the entire Blue Lodge ritual, the Hiram Abiff legend, is a retelling of the Osirian cycle of Egypt, which is the dying and resurrected Sun Man. In Christianity, this is Jesus Christ. The Blue Lodge itself is laid out based on the movement of the sun, where the worshipful master, this is the guy who rules the lodge, sits in the east representing a rising sun. The junior warden sits in the south as the sun at meridian or noon, and the senior warden sits in the west as the setting sun. The whole Hiram Abiff ritual is, again, a solar allegory. Hiram Abiff is killed and resurrected. I'm just going to condense this material as quickly as possible. But like examples of this is Hiram Abiff, when he's killed, he's buried west of the temple, symbolizing the dying or setting sun. Hiram Abiff is his body is concealed with something known as a sprig of acacia. This is a flower sacred to the sun god Apollo. When Hiram Abiff is resurrected, he's resurrected on what's called the strong grip of a lion's paw. The lion's paw is a reference, to the constellation of Leo the lion, which is the sole house of the sun. When Hiram Abiff goes missing, King Solomon dispatches 12 fellowcraft to go look for the body. The 12 fellowcraft of the 12 houses of the zodiac going looking for their lost solar ruler. This is paralleled or reflective of Christianity, where Jesus the Son is assisted by 12 houses of the zodiac, known as the 12 apostles. And this is carried forward in this solar iconography and this astrological symbolism is carried forward in this higher degree Enochian, Royal Arch Enochian ceremony. And this comes again straight out of the Book of Enoch, where Enoch is in heaven. He's told it's to study, if you want to be like God, study the movements of the sun, the moon, the sun being the bringer of esoteric wisdom and the symbol of esoteric enlightenment. Enoch himself in Genesis is surrounded with solar symbolism. Right off the bat, we're told in Genesis that Enoch's days or time on earth was 365 years. 365 is an obvious reference to the solar calendar. And you have a whole astrological book in one Enoch, in the Book of Enoch, and in the Royal Arch Ceremonial. I mean, I'll just get into this briefly. You have concepts where the hidden treasure vault, where the tetragrammaton or this lost word is kept, is discovered by the sun rays penetrating this vault. So right there, you have a solar reference. You have with it's a solar journey. When the second temple is being constructed, the sojourners arrive and they have to pass through 4 veils, which is a solar journey. The veils are the symbols on the veils are an eagle, a man, a lion, and a bull. And of course, the man is Aquarius, the bull is Taurus, the lion is Leo, and the eagle is Aquila the eagle, which is Scorpio. And of course, Scorpio, Leo, Taurus, and Aquarius are the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac, representing a solar journey. So yeah, you'll have this solar Enochian symbolism right off the bat. And this is coming out of the Blue Lodge, but it's certainly being carried forward in this high degree Royal Arch, Enochian ceremony, which documents the recovery of this lost word of a master mason. What is lost in the Blue Lodge is found in this premier high degree ritual, which bears the biblical patriarch's name.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like just a beautiful ritual. You hear all these horror stories about Masonic initiation and this and that, and honestly, much of what you're talking about is high alchemy, very spiritual and very ascended, if you ask me. So,
no, I agree with you. Yeah, I agree.
That's why I wish people would learn more about it and get less fearful. But let's move along a little bit on the cinema symbolism, because I did want to talk to you about that. So how did you dovetail the 2 books?
Right. Well, like I said, it's a very good question. How do you go from this book, this 700-page compendium on occult, esoteric, Masonic history, into a book about movie symbolism? Mm-hmm. Well, as I was writing the Royal Arch of Enoch, the way I had a whole I have it's 15 chapters, and I sort of did this introductory. The first 3 chapters are what I call like introductory material, where if you know nothing about Freemasonry, you're going to be able to understand this book. Where I break down where the York Rite comes from, where the Scottish Rite comes from. When the Blue Lodge is founded. I give an entire history of Freemasonry. Then I get into the Book of Enoch. Then I get into people who are the progenitors of this. People. I get into the whole Society of Jesus. People in America like DeWitt Clinton, Ezra Ames, Thomas Smith Webb. I get into the architecture with D.C., of the cultivation of the American legal system, which is very Freemasonic. One of the guys behind this is Simon Greenleaf. He equated the practice of law in America to Druidism, and basically said if you're a lawyer in the United States, you are an arch-Druid. And he is, who's Simon Greenleaf? He is the founder of Harvard Law School, so we're not dealing with some conspiracy person. We're dealing with a very highly educated individual. Then I get into the whole architecture of D.C., Baltimore. But then I was rounding this up, and I kind of wanted to bring the book up to modern day. So I thought, well, let me, and I knew this stuff was out there, and I'd seen it. I mean, and really one of the first movies that I'd seen it in other movies, but I thought, I wanted to do, what's the most Freemasonic movie I could think of? And things like The Man Who Would Be King aside, because that's kind of obvious, but like the National Treasure movie, where you have these Masonic overtones, and these, this Masonic theme in it. But what a lot of people wasn't aware of was that the first National Treasure movie is the Royal Arch Ceremonial. I mean, that's the ritual. If you want to watch the Masonic Royal Arch Ceremonial on the big screen, or its cinematic version, I guess is a better way for me to say it, watch National Treasure Part 1. That's it. It's the recovery of the Masonic treasure vault, the underground treasure vault beneath the holy ground. I mean, that's the Royal Arch ritual. I mean, in the movie, it's the recovery of the Masonic treasure vault, under the holy ground, under Trinity College in New York, which is a clear reference to DeWitt Clinton and the Masonically nuanced Empire State. So then even in part 2 of National Treasure, you'll find a lot of hidden Masonic clues where every time they want wisdom, they got to go to chapter 13. This is again symbolizing the restoration of wisdom in this 13th Enochian degree. In Riley Cooper's book, it's the 13th chapter. So I wanted to bring the book up to modern day. So I did this final chapter in the Royal Arch where it's basically Masonic, solar, what I would call Enochian themes. And again, it's the 2 National Treasure movies, the Being There movie with Peter Sellers, which is a biblical solar allegory, The Da Vinci Code movie has the same number 13 in it. The same number 13 theme in it as well. The Excalibur John Borman King Arthur movie is again the solar allegory, the solar astrological, where King Arthur is the sun. The Knights of the Round Table, it's the round table, it's the zodiac wheel. The Knights, there's 12 of them representing the 12 houses of the zodiac, or there's 24 of them depending on which rendition of the legend you want to listen to. And the 24 is the nocturnal and diurnal phases of the zodiac. So I talked about these movies in the Royal Arch of Enoch. The Ninth Gate with Johnny Depp is another one. That's Hebrew Kabbalah from start to finish. So there was these other movies. So I did those, but then there was this whole other slate of movies that I wanted to talk about that had these same sort of hidden themes in them: mythology, numerology, Kabbalah. I'm thinking off the top of my head, and I know we talked about this the last time I was on one of your shows, with things like The Exorcist, the Star Wars movies, the Matrix films, which are decidedly Gnostic. So literally, when I got done the Royal Arch of Enoch, and when it was published 2 years ago, I immediately started in on this cinema symbolism book, and I wrote it, and it's 13 chapters. There's a reason why it's 13 chapters, and that's no coincidence. And it was published like we were talking about, like a month ago. I mean, it's brand new,
right?
And it's out. It's in paperback. It's in all the Kindle, the Nooks, the ebooks. You can get it on Amazon. You get it from my publisher. I'll just throw in if you want. Just real quick, I'll do a quick plug. If you want the Royal Arch of Enoch and the Cinema Symbolism signed copies, I've been getting a lot of emails on this for signed copies. They're for sale now, only through my publisher. If you go to my website, which is robertwsullivaniv.com, there's a banner you could click on, which will take you to my publisher's site, and you can buy the signed copies of either Cinema Symbolism or Royal Arch of Enoch or both.
Excellent. Yeah, I encourage people to do that. Get a nice autograph. Great. Yeah. So do you think others can see the symbolism who are not affiliated with Masonic ritual?
Well, I think I know you kind of asked me this in the last time I was on. I mean, for me personally, studying this material for 20 years and reading about, these mystical themes definitely opens my, it made it a lot easier to see some of this hidden symbolism, this alchemy, mythology going on in popular movies. That definitely helps. I think people can see it. I've read, people who are aware of this material, but again, it does require some study. If you're not familiar with, for example, if you're not familiar with Gnosticism at all, and you don't know what that is, you're not going to see it in The Matrix, which is the Gnostic religion from start to finish, all three movies. But if you're not familiar with it, then you're not going to see it. It's the same thing with things like, you'll see the same sort of symbolisms going on in the Exorcist movie if you're not familiar with it. But now, if you are familiar with it, then yeah, you definitely can pick it up. There is also, and I address this in the book, there is this dominant theme out there that and I kind of don't buy into this. That every time a triangle appears on screen in a movie in the background, that this is evidence of this satanic Hollywood demonic plot, and this is the Illuminati, and this is a film of the Illuminati. I do not ascribe to this. I think in some instances those I know for a fact there are instances where a Masonic eye in a triangle or a Masonic pyramid, do have symbolic meaning. That's true. But, I just, read some of these blogs and watch some of these videos that every time a triangle with a circular object near it pops up on screen, this is the Illuminati and, this is a demonic film. I just don't ascribe to that. I think in some instances also, it could be placed there intentionally by movie makers, for this exact purpose to sort of, generate, controversy and get people talking. That's Hollywood's modus operandi. But these on another level, this mythology, Kabbalism, this numerology is incorporated into these movies. And I guess, I'll let you ask the question, but, why is it being done?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they including this stuff is sort of the question that I get asked.
Right.
And it's a fair question to ask, because to me, it's like sacred geometry. It's like incorporating into a building, the alignments, the sacred geometry, the golden ratio, Vesica Pisces. It's turning the building into a sublime work of art, and it's the same thing. It's turning these films, these pieces of celluloid, into these mythological, sublime masterpieces by incorporating the symbology. At least in my opinion, at any rate.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. Some people would associate it with a form of brainwashing on a subliminal level, but at the same time, I agree with you. I know that the eye, or even the eye in the pyramid, that's not a negative thing, although a lot of people read it like that. But I think that it's just based on perception and education for the most part. And also, there's a lot of superstition involved when it comes to symbolism.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The whole... it's a way also for a filmmaker to incorporate some of this, to forward a story along, or to relate a deeper meaning to the movie without him actually having to say it on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, you'll find this in The Exorcist. You'll find this in The Shining. Where the filmmakers will play around, with like the weather outside, even that can have a symbolic, meaning, where they can tell you this on a subliminal and subconscious level, and it can have a powerful meaning without them actually having to do any more, where they don't have to put an icon up on the screen, just by suggesting the weather outside, and the time of year where if it's winter time, where the sun is at death and darkness is ruling, this could convey, this on a subconscious level. This what we're talking about right now comes straight out of the world of Carl Gustav Jung, the collective unconscious, concepts of astrology, the movement of the sun, the movement of the moon, the movement of the stars, sorcery, magic, superstition. This is dissected by Carl Gustav Jung, how important this is to the unconscious mind. It's really what Jung was talking about was really, he was reinventing Plato's theory of forms, where, in a nutshell, and I'll just keep it short, where there were things that were so inherited in our religion, in our unconscious psyche, that they're part of us whether we want them to be or not. And what Jung described this as was the collective unconscious, and he said things that were just so ancient, that were just so inherited, that you'll find them in mythology, religion, things like astrotheology, solar iconography, lunar iconography, astrological iconography, the constellations, sorcery, magic, things like that appear on screen, whether even, they can be placed there intentionally to hook us, or alternatively, the filmmaker can also be subject to this, where he may not even be aware that he's doing it. It's a fascinating study.
I totally agree with that, yeah. Well, it's like a band of consciousness, and even if we don't want to accept certain things, it's in the ethers. We just pull it in, if you ask me, on so many different levels, and even if it's on a subliminal level. But did you notice this symbolism in the older black and white films, or did you even look at that yet, or no?
Yeah, I definitely, I definitely delved into some of the older, black and white films.
Mm-hmm.
I have a whole, I know half of it, most of the movies in color, but The Wizard of Oz has a lot of very esoteric themes in it. The man who wrote The Wizard of Oz the novel, was a man named L. Frank Baum, and he was a member of Madame Blavatsky's Theosophy movement. So you'll find a lot of theosophy, of Gnosticism, really going on in The Wizard of Oz. I have a whole chapter on it. You also have a lot of political allegories. Baum was living at the turn of the last century, and you'll find a lot of political allegory in The Wizard of Oz, where a lot of the characters in the film are representing political figures in the United States at the time. Just, for example, The Wizard of Oz is President William McKinley. The Cowardly Lion is William Jennings Bryan or Eugene Debs. So you have really two levels of symbology going on with like The Wizard of Oz, where you have the political allegory and then the Gnostic initiatory allegory with Dorothy Gale going on this mystical journey to discover herself, and for her it's to realize there's no place like home. But yeah, other movies that I talked about was the horror movies, the old black and white horror movies. Dracula with Lugosi, the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster. Yeah, I mean, these come straight out of the world of the occult. Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, was in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, was very familiar with mystical and occult themes that were circulating Europe post-French Revolution. And you'll find a lot of fear, where Frankenstein's monster is a Kabbalistic golem. It's inanimate material, imbued with life. This comes straight out of Hebrew Kabbalah. The Wolfman, like lycanthropy, delves into a lot of themes of witchcraft. The Wolfman and the wolf and transformation into the nocturnal, monster by the full moon, Diana. This ties into a lot of witchcraft themes, lunar adoration, and you'll find this being echoed in these old Universal horror movies. Another film that also ties in with these themes, which is an old black and white one. It's a very dark movie. I mean, it's very ahead of its time, and it's a movie called The Black Hat. I know there's a lot of movies out there that bear that title. The one I'm talking about is the one that came out in the early 30s, starring Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. This is a very, very dark movie that deals with Satanism and necrophilia. And for the early 1930s, it's an incredibly dark movie. And you have the Boris Karloff character. The character's name is Hjalmar Perlsig. I'm going to probably pronounce that wrong, but he is embodying Aleister Crowley on the film. He is this occultist who is charged with this Luciferian black magic cult, and is involved with these very demonic sex magics, things like that. It's an incredibly dark movie for the time, but the black and white movies have it as well. A lot of the old Universal movies from, my goodness gracious, the Citizen Kane movie with Orson Welles is based on the life of William Randolph Hearst. I talk about that briefly in the book. So the early black and whites, a lot of the screen classics, definitely incorporate a lot of mystical elements, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it certainly sounds that way. And also, when you think about it, I guess Hollywood's just saturated in the esoteric, whether people like it or not. And I guess, there was a lot of talk about Hollywood being connected with a lot of satanic behavior and this and that, and not so positive things. But I suppose that there are some good things out of it also. But, it's amazing to me how you figure all this out. You actually put it together like a puzzle when you're watching these films.
Yeah, that's right. If I'm watching a movie for symbolism, believe me, I've watched many a movie and there's nothing to it. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that's worth talking about briefly. I don't want people to think that, you could find this in every movie. That is not the case. Some movies are totally devoid of this. Movies, I'll give you a perfect example of this. Movies by the director of Tim Burton have nothing. There is nothing in these movies whatsoever. I've seen most of Tim Burton's. Yeah, I've seen most of Tim Burton's movies. The Batman mythology has a lot of Greek mythology in it, and a lot of concepts relating to the shadow self of Jung. And there is some esoteric in Batman, but that really goes to Bob Kane, the guy who created Batman, more than it goes to Burton. And Edward Scissorhands is like Frankenstein's monster, is a Kabbalistic golem. But yeah, you look at the movies of Tim Burton, by and large, there's nothing to any of these. I've seen most of his films, and they are just, they're entertaining movies. I'm not putting them down or anything like that. But I've never seen any sort of esoteric or hidden themes or occult symbols or anything like that that would indicate some sort of underlying mythological hidden storyline or anything like that. Quentin Tarantino's another one. Nothing. Maybe a couple archetypes here and there, but by and large, nothing really going on in his movies. So yeah, it's important to say, I don't want your listeners to think, you can just watch any movie and find this. Mm-hmm. That is not the case. There are many movies out there that do not incorporate arcane themes whatsoever. So yeah, when you're watching these movies, you will sometimes see, it's just a movie and there's nothing to it. But yeah, usually when I'm watching a movie for esoteric symbolism. If it's just something I'm having on in the background, I'm not paying attention to it. Yeah, I'm not doing it. But if it's a movie that I'm going to dissect, on a symbolic basis, or I'm going to really keep an eye out for it. For starters, I usually always have to watch it more than once. It usually takes me at least 2 or 3 times to get everything. And I mean, believe me, there's been some movies that have taken me many more than that, where, the movie that comes to mind is Black Swan by Darren Aronofsky. He every time I watch that, I seem to be seeing something new in that every time. I mean, that movie is just overloaded with stuff. But yeah, no, I basically sit there in front of my flat screen with a pad of paper, with my remote in case I have to pause the movie or go back. I mean, that's always happening, especially in Aronofsky's films, where he'll reference something at the end of the movie and you'll be like, wait a minute, am I seeing this right? Didn't he not show me something different at the beginning? Or is he insinuating something that I might have missed at the beginning? So then I'll have to go back and watch the beginning of the movie again. So yeah, no, I sit there and watch the movie. I pause it. I make notes. And again, I usually have to watch the movie more than once to absorb everything, I guess is the way I'm trying to say it. And then once I've watched it a couple times and I'm happy with it, then I'll get to work on writing it and, putting it down. And that's how cinema symbolism, came to be in existence. And right now I'm actually writing, it's one of 3 books I'm working on right now. I'm actually writing, after I got done cinema symbolism, I knew there was even more movies that I wanted to talk about. And I remember thinking to myself, well, just I'll give you an example of how Cinema Symbolism 2, which is Cinema Symbolism sequel, is being written. When I was writing Cinema Symbolism, I did the 6 Star Wars movies. Then I did, and I can't remember the order they're in the book. I'd have to go look. But I did the 6 Star Wars movies, then I did the 3 Matrix movies, and then I did the 3 Lord of the Rings movies. And I was originally going to do, after that, I was going to do I think there's 8 of them, the Harry Potter movies. And I thought to myself, that there is no way I can tackle. I mean, this book will never end. Right. So I thought, okay, what I'll do is I'll excise out the Harry Potter stuff. I do a little bit of it in Cinema Symbolism, but I'll do Cinema Symbolism 2, where I'm going to do the Harry Potter, the C.S. Lewis, some of the Western stuff,
nice.
The Alan Moore material. Yeah, and that's something I'm writing right now, actually.
Cool. So the Harry Potter is definitely connected with some of the symbolism?
Oh, yeah.
I like that series.
Yeah, the Harry Potter, I mean, again, it's just right off the bat with Harry Potter, just right off the bat you have the whole concept of the dying and resurrected Sun Man, the savior archetype. Harry Potter is killed and resurrected. You'll find this in the Matrix with Neo, who is killed and resurrected. These guys do battle with the enemies of darkness. In Harry Potter, it's Voldemort and the Death Eaters. In Matrix, it's the Archons or the agents and the Demiurge or the Architect. So yeah, you'll find that concept going on. Then you'll have the Hermes Trismegistus character in both stories. This is the wizard hermit character who possesses the wisdom but only dishes it out piecemeal. You'll find this in Star Wars, who is Obi-Wan Kenobi. In the Matrix trilogy, it's Morpheus, and this is very Gnostic and dualistic, the name Morpheus. It's interesting because in the Matrix film, Morpheus is the character who brings Neo out of his dreamlike state to the real world. He awakens Neo or Anderson to Gnosis. Yet in mythology, it's Morpheus who is the god of sleep and the god of dreams. So you have this dualistic element right off the bat with Morpheus's name. And again, he's the keeper of the wisdom. He knows the truth about the Matrix, but he only gives it away as he needs to know, as the people need to know. And of course, in Harry Potter, this is Albus Dumbledore. It's Gandalf the Grey in Lord of the Rings. So yeah, you'll find the wizard, hermit archetype, the Hermes Trismegistus wizard, all over the place. Yeah, I mean, and Harry Potter, the Harry Potter stuff. I'm just trying to think of some of the stuff right off the bat. You have you have the whole thing with the enemy of Harry Potter is Draco Malfoy. And Draco, the name Draco is a reference to the serpent demon constellation, and this is why it goes into Slytherin Hall, which is the serpent, which is symbolized by the serpent. So yeah, you'll have the whole, a lot of the characters in Harry Potter have the astrological names. Bellatrix one of the stars in oh good God, is one of the stars, I think, in Leo, I want to say, and maybe in oh goodness, I forget off the bat. But then you have Sirius Black, Regulus. These are all stars in the constellation Leo. So you'll have a lot of astrological symbolism going on in Harry Potter. Yeah, I mean it's something I'm dissecting in cinema symbolism too.
Well, it's interesting. I'm wondering if J.K. Rowling even thought she was doing that, or is it subliminal? Okay.
Yeah, no, she knew, because there's one of the I mean, this isn't a coincidence. There's a statue. It's in the book. I don't think it turns up in the movies. It's in one of the books. One of the statues of Hogwarts is a statue of Paracelsus, who was a real famous Renaissance medieval Kabbalist and alchemist. So she, that can't be a coincidence. Paracelsus was a guy who was trying to. He's a real interesting character. He was trying to effectuate alchemy. The transmutation of base metal into gold. He flirted with the occult, medicine, and in order to transmute base metal into gold, it's the creation of the philosopher's stone, and this is of course one of the names of the Harry Potter stories is Harry Potter and the philosopher's stone. In the movie, it's the sorcerer's stone, but it was the philosopher's stone. I think it's in the first book, and there's a statue of Paracelsus at Hogwarts, who was this real famous medieval alchemist and Renaissance Kabbalist, basically.
You don't miss a beat, do you? That's good.
No. Yeah.
That's great.
No, you'll find this stuff all over the place. Paracelsus, if you want to get into this and you want to talk about the black and white movies, Paracelsus. Hang on, let me take a sip of water.
Okay, sure.
Paracelsus. His name literally means above Celsus, and Celsus was a pagan critic of Christianity. Paracelsus was a Renaissance medieval alchemist and mystic. In Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, Dr. Victor Frankenstein references Paracelsus as one of his inspirations. He also references Cornelius Agrippa also, who was a Renaissance black magician. He was into the darker side of magic. And one of the things that, this is interesting, this is in the book, one of the things that Paracelsus was known to try to create, some say actually created it, was something called a homunculus, which is this little miniature human being. It's a Kabbalistic golem. And what I mean by that, it's a golem. It's an inanimate object imbued with human life. Paracelsus was rumored to have created this thing called the homunculus, which is this miniature little man or little creature that was this little Kabbalistic golem. In Frankenstein, in the movie and the book. It's in the movie. It's in the first movie with Karloff. That's what the monster is a Kabbalistic golem. It's dead, tissue imbued with life. In the Bride of Frankenstein, you have a Paracelsus character who actually turns up named Dr. Petraeus, or Dr. Pretorius, I believe it's pronounced. And the name Pretorius actually references Paracelsus. And this is in the book. It's fascinating. And when Pretorius shows up, he has the little people with him. He has effectuated life, but unlike Frankenstein, who has created the giant, Pretorius has created the little homunculi, the Paracelsus little Kabbalistic golems. He's got the little devil character, the ballerina, the monarch, and you'll see the homunculi, the Paracelsus homunculi on the screen in The Bride of Frankenstein with Boris Karloff. This is the sequel with Colin Clive played Victor Frankenstein. Yeah, so Paracelsus turns up in Frankenstein, and you'll see him in Bride of Frankenstein, and in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, he's actually referenced as being a statue at Hogwarts. So yeah, you'll see this stuff. These occult guys and these mystical Renaissance Kabbalists turn up if you really got the eye to see it. I mean, another one of these, and I'll just get into it briefly. This is in the Ninth Gate movie. Was the one with Johnny Depp, where the guy who was into the Renaissance Kabbalist, who was into the Satanic Grimoire, was a guy by the name of Aristide de Torquia. He's the guy who created the Ninth Gate Grimoire and was burned at the stake. this is paralleling a real life mystic named Giordano Bruno, who dabbled in the same sort of Kabbalistic esoteric material, and he was burned at the stake in 1600. And you're told in the ninth gate that Torquia was burned at the stake at 1666. So yeah, you'll see these guys. Well, once, I mean, my goodness, and again another one in The Exorcist, Father Marin. The Father Marin priest, Max von Sydow, the guy who's the Jesuit priest interested in the occult and mysticism, who's excavating the pagan ruin at the beginning of the movie. This is coming out of the world of the Renaissance mystic, the Jesuit priest Athanasius Kircher, who did the same thing, who excavated these pagan ruins and was interested in the pagan origins of Christianity. So you'll see Athanasius Kircher in Father Marin. So yeah, once you have the symbolic eye for it, you'll start seeing this stuff all over the place.
Wow, that's really fascinating. So yeah, they obviously did think all this through when they were creating all these movies. That's really incredible.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you'll definitely. I mean, if you were to see this once or twice in a movie, or in literature, or or the symbolism, you would be willing to. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same thing that goes on with Freemasonry and like things like the architecture in the Federal District. If you were to see it once or twice, you'd be willing to chalk it up as coincidence. And it's the same thing with the movies. If you saw it once or twice, you chalk it up as coincidence. But when you see these same themes over and over and over again, you're well beyond the coincidence level. And it's the same thing with the architecture in the Federal District. If you saw it once or twice, you'd be willing to chalk it up to a coincidence. But when you see the same themes over and over and over again, you realize that you're well beyond the level of coincidence. And it's the same thing with the movies. When you watch the movies and you see this symbology, this arcana, this occultism going on just, ad nauseum once you have the symbolic eye for it. And it's one of the reasons I wrote the book was, familiarize people with this arcana. So when they watch these movies, they can keep an eye out for it. And you'll watch these movies in a totally different way. I mean, my goodness gracious, there are clues that these guys give away to this stuff that are so adroitly concealed. And once you understand what you're looking for, you'll start picking it up, and you'll see stuff that I know they never intended for you to find out. I mean, and again, the Black Swan movie is one that comes to mind, where that thing is just so embedded with mysticism and alchemy and all kind of esoterica. You really have to watch the thing like 5 or 6 times to pick up on it. But yeah, I mean, it was one of the motivating factors that I wrote the book. And what I was really pleased with was and with cinema symbolism, I think if a person reads it, you're going to discover a lot of stuff in these movies that you never knew was in there.
Right, and these messages don't appear negative. I mean, you're breaking it down insofar as the symbols go, but it's not a negative like what most people would perceive. Would you say? Or
no, no, I don't see it as negative at all. I mean, I guess it can be. I mean, if you want to say, oh, this guy's trying to fool me or sneak something by me. But if you're familiar with the material, they won't fool you anymore. But I don't see it as negative at all. I see it as more as what I was talking about earlier, is by incorporating a lot of this symbolism, you're turning the movie into this sublime masterpiece. That it's like a piece of artwork that incorporates sacred geometry, or I mean, like Da Vinci's Mona Lisa has all this sacred numerology symbolism going on in it. It's the same thing with the movie. By incorporating this iconography, you're transforming the movie into this sublime mythological masterpiece. I don't see it negative at all. I mean, some people do, but it's more of a subjective thing. But no, I do not see it negative at all. I love doing it. I love watching the movies for keeping an eye out for this stuff. I think it's fascinating, personally.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating also. And I do believe once you understand what's going on a bigger scale, on a higher level of your own spirituality and consciousness, then the information is more ascended, the way you perceive it too. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of issues, and I hear that a lot. But I think that I like your presentation. I like the way you're approaching this, and I think for people who need more information and would like to know more about how to break down these movies and the sacred symbolism and cinema symbolism, I think they should pick up a copy of your book and check it out for sure. So
well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's the way I take it as well. I mean, and like you said, there's a lot of negativity out there with this, and I think it's some of it stems from the idea of, well, since it's being hidden or being presented, it must be negative. I don't see it that way at all. it's like we were talking about. I mean, I have incorporated some of the symbolism in my own books. And it wasn't anything I was trying to do negatively, but it's just, esoteric symbolism. Again, the Cinema Symbolism has 13 chapters. That's no coincidence. The original Royal Arch of Enoch book, was 690 pages. That was intentionally done by me. The number 69, when turned sideways, is the sigil of the House of Cancer. This is in the Northern Hemisphere where the sun is at its fullest strength. So I'm investing the book with solar enlightenment is what I'm trying to do. So, I've done it before. Right. I don't think it's negative at all.
No.
Mystical alchemy. Yeah, exactly. And, I have no problem telling people that. I was hoping maybe people could figure it out on their own. But, I've done it myself. And, you'll find that stuff in movies as well.
That's awesome. And we're heading for a break. Everybody, please stay tuned. We'll be right back with Rob Sullivan.